All right. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 10th installment of Active Citizenship Foundation webinar series, Life After Pandemic, Facing the New Normal. I am Jezza Rodriguez from Student Council Alliance of the Philippines, your moderator today. Today, we will talk about the community response to e-learning with two esteemed guests from local government unit of Malabon and Mindanao State University. For the next 1.5 hours, we will talk about how they managed to assist the students and teachers during the lockdown, how they plan to reach out to those who do not have reliable internet connection, and lastly, how they plan to deal with the outpouring demands of the academe in the time of pandemic. So we are now live on Facebook and Zoom. So if you have any questions, suggestions, or violent reaction, please feel free to comment it below the box or in the chat box. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is currently a full professor at the Department of Sociology of the Mindanao State University in General Santos, where he teaches undergraduate sociology courses and graduate courses in public administration, sustainable development studies, and Philippine studies. He holds a PhD in international cooperation studies from the Nagoya University in Japan, an MA in sociology at the University of the Philippines Diliman, and an AB in Sociology at the MSU Jensen. He was an International Research Fellow at the Graduate School of Sociology at the University of Tokyo. He took up graduate studies in comparative culture with specialization in international economics and development studies at Sophia University in Tokyo, Japan. And he is also currently the president of the Philippine Sociological Society and trustee of the Philippine Social Science Council. As a son of Mindanao, he is currently involved in peace initiatives in the southern Philippines, and he is currently a member of the Independent Decommissioning Body, or IDB, tasked to oversee the decommissioning of combatants and weapons of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, or MILF. He was a member of the House of Representatives of the Philippine Congress from 2002 to 2007 of the 12 and 13 Congresses representing Akbayan Party List. He served as a vice chair of the House of Committee on Higher and Technical Education from 2004 to 2017. As past president of the MSU System Faculty Federation, he served twice as faculty regent of the MSU system, and lastly, he was a trustee of the Government Service Insurance System from 2010 to 2016. A virtual warm round of applause to our first speaker, Professor Mario Aguja. Good morning, Prof. Mayong.
Good morning, Jessa, at magandang umaga sa lahat ng sumusunod sa atin sa programang ito.
So our second speaker, I'll just introduce him later on. So Prof. Mayong, we're actually very interested po. No? MSU system was the first school in the country who actually said that we need to pass our students come January to March. So we'd like to hear what was the tricks of your administration on the decision making on that, and ano po yung mga current initiatives ng MSU sa mga students in Mindanao. So if you are ready to share your screen, you may now do so.
Thank you very much, Jessa. Let me just share a screen I prepared for everybody for our session today. Well, as you all know, when the pandemic happened, we were caught unaware of this. No? And how do you survive in the university? So in MSU, we decided basically that we have to elevate and upgrade all our students. It's not their fault. It's not the fault of the teachers. We are basically, that was March, no? Dahil nagbago na ho yung sistema ng aming classes, just like the University of the Philippines. So basically ay nakatatlong buwan na kami ng aming mga klase. And based on that, we have enough basis also to give a grade to our students whether they pass or fail in the semester. So I think that one we're able to go about, kailangan lang habulin in the coming semesters. How do we deal with our students, to catch up with their learnings basically. But I think the greatest challenge for us is yung kasalukuyang panahon natin. Paano ba natin hinahandle yung ating mga klase? How do we engage with our students? Many people call it a new normal. Pero as a sociologist, ay pwede kong sabihin ito ay bago, new siya. Pero I don't think we should treat it as normal because this is an abnormal times for all of us. And therefore, because we take it as abnormal, it means to say we have to do something. rather than to admit it, this is the way of life today. Kasi ang ating normal na sitwasyon ay basically we are a social being. We have been trained all these years basically para makisalamuha sa iba. No? Yun yung ating training. Kaya nung mga bata pa tayo, sabi sa atin, go with your friends, go with your families, go visit your relatives, go to church, you know. Dahil yan yung normal na bagay sa ating buhay and we call it the norm, no? Pero ngayon, marami sa mga bagay na yan ang hindi na natin kayang gawin, no? Let me just share again my slide. No? Hindi na natin siya kayang gawin kasi ay because of the danger nga ni COVID ngayon sa atin. At sabi sa atin din, we all have the potentials of what we want to be. No? Parang when we were born, the potential is always there sa atin and nadidevelop natin yung ating humanness or yung potential natin na yan when we are in interaction with others. So it was through interaction with others na nadidevelop natin yung ating humanness, yung ating pagkatao. And therefore, we cannot develop ourselves or there's a difficulty developing ourselves, no, if we are not in interaction with others. But during the crisis, maraming restriction sa interaction na pwede nating gawin, no? In the web of our social life during the pandemic, for example, many cannot visit their relatives or their families, for example, or their lolo or lola that they used to visit. Many of our students cannot even engage their classmates on a physical form. No? Lalo na tayo mga Pilipino, very touchy tayo, no? May beso-beso and etc. Mag-aanim na buwan na, no? Hindi nagawa ng marami yan. And I'm sure we all find the inconvenience of going to our religious ritual without going to church because what we know, to do our rituals, religious rituals, we have to go to church, no? And the art of the beauty of listening the music and making a sign of peace to each and everyone is a powerful thing for all of us. But we cannot do that now, no? At syempre, mag-uundas ulit tayo, hindi na natin mabibisita yung ating mga mahal sa buhay na pumanaw na. Our medical facilities now, you cannot easily go to a doctor now or you cannot easily go to your dentist now, no? Kung may medical needs ka, one ay dahil stretch yung ating mga medical facilities. The other one ay syempre natatakot tayo na baka doon pa tayo mahawa ng COVID. Then of course, we cannot just easily get out of our community kasi there are communal lockdown. By barangay, ngayon ay by streets, no? By purok. So because of so many of these restraints, hindi natin mapuntahan yung ating kapitbahay o hindi natin nakikita yung ating mga kalaro. And of course, going to school, I think the illustration I have is not the way how many schools are operating because students actually nowadays are not going to school, no? Because they are restricted even in the tertiary education. There's a restriction for students to go to school. Therefore, back to school was not the normal that we know we back to school. You know, we always look at excitement in going back to school, but now we're not be able to do it. So how are we coping up? Of course, just like many other schools in the entire country, we prepared our guidelines. You know, how do we conduct this one, assuming that there will be no face-to-face interaction with our students. You know, so we also trained our faculty members, but you know, training faculty member is one thing. Developing the confidence in the faculty of running the online system, for example, and other flexible ways of learning is a difficult thing. You know, we as teachers had been trained that our territory is our classroom. Pero ngayon, parang, taypa, nasaan yung ating classroom? No? So si ma'am, lalo na kung above 60 si ma'am, medyo challenge yan. Paano niya igagamay na ma-maximize niya whatever the technology will offer. But there's also a downside to it. No? I will discuss later downside to it. Then we made use of our hardware and software available, hoping that we'll be able to keep in touch with our students. But all of this, while inaayos natin, this is abnormal times, marami siyang problema. No? Nag-create siya ng maraming problema. Halimbawa, marami pa rin sa ating mga faculty, not only in MSU but in other schools, who still have to develop their confidence para gamayin yung bagong technology na yan, no? At para maging effective. Kaya nagkaka-miss sila ng kanila mga estudyante kasi si ma'am hindi niya makita agad yung kanyang estudyante, no? You could imagine, for example, you have first-year students, ngayon, bagong-bagong magka-college, hindi pa nakapunta sa universidad, hindi pa namin nakita, tapos hahanapin mo para magklase kayo, no? Yun yung challenge yan. Then of course, the problem always with hardware and software, we realize na wala pala kami yung kailangan talagang hardware and software, no? Or kung meron man kami ay napakaluma na, no? Yung mga computer na luma, hindi na upgrade na mga server and other things, and compounded all our problems. But nevertheless, we have to go through. Sabi nga nila, kailangan nating igapang yan, no? We cannot sacrifice the future of our students. So remember, all of us, whether you got positive or not, we are all affected by the COVID crisis. At ito yung mahalaga na yung effect sa atin ay iba-iba. At the start of my classes, we started only classes in MSU in September 14 because we have to do lockdown for some time in the school, no? Dahil kapitbahay lang nung aming paaralan ay may mga cases ng COVID, no? So for health security of everybody, we decided na okay, let's move it, and we started September 14. At the start of classes, I'll ask my students basically, what are their top 3 worries under the current circumstance? Without telling my students paano namin patatakbuhin yung aming klase, but I just asked my students, no? Una ay, ang problema ng mga estudyante ay technical. Kung mag-go online ka, basically may have problem of connectivity, no? Una, yan ay problema ng signal, no? Unstable internet connection. Meron pa kami mga estudyante na wala talagang connection sa kanilang lugar, no? Kasi kung titingnan mo, I think it's one of the briefing of the ICT, pinakita niya yung malaking lugar ng South Central Mindanao ay actually hirap na hirap ang connection, no? So kahit ikaw ay may cellphone, no? Problema talaga yung connection na yan. Then second is gadget. No? Many of our students don't have the necessary gadget to do online learning. At best, they have cell phone, and it's not even the top of the brand or top of the models available now. No? So, paano sila mag-aaral? Pangatlo ay load. It costs money for students. Kaya yung takot na lang ng mga estudyante, how they will go about it. Kasi iba naman yung nasa school sila, iba rin yung nandyan lang sila sa bahay. Notwithstanding na pati yung mga pamilya nila ay apektado ng COVID na ito. No? Yung trabaho ng tatay niya, trabaho ng nanay niya, and therefore economically ay may problema yung mga estudyante. Then of course, typical of us in Mindanao ay yung power interruptions. You have power interruptions here and there, unannounced at most time, and therefore how the students were able to go through with that. Second is the learning environment. Studying at home is not easy for many students. Noise disruption. So when I had my first class, no, I used Google Meet. I could hear all sounds of animals you can find in our place. You know, you have a chicken in there, you know, you have a dog in there. At the background, you have a motorcycle or a jeepney, and etc. If you live in a small family with a single or two rooms in a house, how will you be able to have a good environment to go on your learning? Then, syempre, yung mga bata ay mga estudyante namin, gusto rin nila ng privacy but they go their online class, no? Bigla na lang may mga sisingit, yung nanay niya makikisilip, yung kapatid niya makikisilip. Which is a good thing, you know, but at the same time, syempre, sometimes yung mga estudyante, they feel it an embarrassing one, no? Tapos may kapatid na biglang iiyak na lalapit sa kanya. So, hindi nakaka-focus din yung ating mga estudyante if ever they are connected with us, or they able to connect. But on top of that, there is a psychosocial thing, no, that keeps the student worried so much. One is that able to learn. Yun yung takot ng mga bata, no? Baka napuputol sila, hindi sila makakonect, hindi nila ma-avail yung mga materials. Then second ay yung issue ng load. Karamihan ng mga estudyante namin ay wala namang internet connection sa kanilang mga bahay, no? So ito ay mga load na lang, paid load na they avail all the time, no? And you could imagine how much it will cost if ikaw ay merong 6 na klase halimbawa. Second, that causes anxiety to our students is they are not used to learn alone. With all these years, no, from grade 1, learning is about group work. It's about working with teacher and students live with each other. Then for the first time, the student has to go on a serious learning thing, wala siyang kaklase, no? Wala siyang kausap, or wala man lang siyang makopyahan. No? So paano ka hindi magiging anxious ng sitwasyon na yan? Then another worry of the students that dahil nga ay hindi naman sila nakukonect palagi ng teacher, baka i-overload sila ng readings kung ano-ano na lang ang itapon na readings. Kaya ako, I made it a rule in my class, halimbawa, na if a student has a contact hour of 3 hours, no, in a 3-unit subject, ang ibig pong sabihin yan sa pamantasan ay 3 oras yung contact with the student every week. So, nagawa ko po yung mga preparations na hinahanda ko sa mga bata, halimbawa, reading materials, binibilang ko ang number of pages, tapos times 4 ko. Bakit 4? For a slow reader, it takes 4 minutes to read a page of a book. So, to make sure that I will not overburden my students doing work in my class beyond 3 hours every week. At least 3 hours or not more than 3 hours every week. Kasi, kung 6 subjects yung bata, he needs 18 hours just to do that, no? Notwithstanding absorbing, doing the assignment, and other things. I think ang appeal ko sa mga teachers, let us be kind to our students. And I think this is the more than any other time that we have to exercise our role as parents or second parents of our students in the concept of loco parentis. More than any other time, it's where students need our attention and our compassion. There were also anxiety for students using the apps, no? Yung mga bata kasi, karamihan yan ay nasa Messenger and Facebook. Pero pag in-upgrade mo na siya, ay type pa, parang hindi na nila kabisado yan, kagaya ng Zoom, no? Or the anxiety or not being able to connect, no? Or napuputol siya, no? Pag kumo-connect yung estudyante sa klase niya. Then, of course, learning alone, I think, in many of my students, it was really a big challenge. I do not know how to deal with it, but what I'm doing is I am in touch with my students on a regular basis on a group chat. Kasi yung messenger chat, yun yung common platform na at least the students ay kaya nila na nandyan sila on a regular basis. Now, I think talking to students regularly is more than necessary for this particular time for us teachers. Then, of course, the last one is financial. No, kasi regular yan, no? So, ibig sabihin mo, yung mga teacher, kung gusto palagi ng nila na gusto mag-online, ay it costs money for the students. And I think ay sariling sagot ng mga bata yan. Kaya maganda rin sana sa ating mga local governments and other authorities to support our students. No? Kahit kunting load po ay malaking tulong sa mga estudyante. Okay, what are the facts? So I had my class last week. So I did a survey of my students, all my students. And I found out 93% of them are using cell phones. So you could imagine na magkaklase ka through cell phones all this time. Okay na, luxury po para sa maraming estudyante ang iPad or laptop. Alam ko yung ibang university ay nagpapadala sila ng tablet sa kanilang mga estudyante. For a state university like us, or many of the state universities in the country, hindi ho kayang gawin yan. No? We don't have that resources because we cater, in fact, to the poorest of the poor. In fact, we even have a problem, even if we give that to the students, can they connect? Then, at the average, nagulat ako kasi nung nagkaklase ako, ay, happy ako. No? Out of my 45 students, may nakalagin na 40. Happy, ano? Ibig sabihin, ay, kaya pala mag-connect. Then, eventually, nung nagsisimula ako ng klase, bumababa yung numero, umaakyat. Bumababa, umaakyat. No? To a high of 40 to a low of 23 students at a time. So, I asked, what happened? And I did a survey to my students and we found out many of them at the average have to log into my class 5 times. No, kasi nawawala-wala sila, napuputol sila. No, so they have to come in again. Then after that, so you could imagine the disruption, but above all, the anxiety for the students na na-miss out niya, no? Yung aking discussion kasi bigla na lang siyang na-cut off. Then, due to bad connections, no, yung iba nakakonect lang dyan, pero sabi ng mga bata, gumagapang ka, sir, pag nagsasalita, hindi namin maintindihan. No? Dahil sa terribly bad connection. So, these are the real challenges. And I think para sa mga guro, kagaya namin, ay dapat talagang kumuha tayo ng datos. Ako as a social scientist, I rely on data. So, I get this data from my students. And I said, okay, given that condition of the students, I cannot do online classes all the time. It's impossible. and they have to do a flexible learning. So this is a challenge for us as teachers now. So I have to do adjustments. I cannot tell to my students, okay, you have to go to Moodle, no, all the time to put your assignments there and etc. Kasi for now, Messenger yung common platform ng mga bata, no? So what we did, no? These are the things I got with my students, no? I did a survey, no? In fact, yung mga first year namin, ang pinaginawa ko, nagpatulong ako sa mga seniors, hanapin isa-isa sa Facebook, no? Kasi these are senior high school. Sabi ko, hanapin nyo isa-isa, tapos let's create the chat room for them this early para makausap na at ma-process na yung mga bata para ma-lessen na yung kanilang anxiety, no? So these were some of the responses of the students, no? When I did a survey, no, sa mga estudyante ko. At kagaya ng nasabi ko, it ranges from technical issues to issue of learning environment to the need to manage the anxiety of many of our students. And therefore, this is a challenge for creativity for all of us, no, as teachers. Kaya ako pa man, early pa man, ay pinaghandaan ko na okay, maganda sana na magklase, no, mag-webinar kagaya nito. Pero many of our students cannot afford to do it on a regular basis. So I think it's a challenge for creativity for us, no? Like for example, in one of the classroom work I did, no, sa peace education class ko. So students has to do these paintings that they have, no, to conceptualize, for example, what is peace for them. And to submit the student has to take a picture and put it in our messenger. I ask students to introduce themselves so that we'll be able to know who they are and what they are, no? Because peace education starts in understanding ourselves and our neighbors. And the only way to do that, many students, what they did to introduce themselves is actually to take a short video of themselves and post it, no? So we'll be sharing it with everybody, no? And others wrote it just like in a sort of a card that the student wrote, no? Because creativity is what we need this time, no? Hindi dapat siya maging excuse na hindi natin kaya. Tingin ko kaya na sanay lang tayo doon sa old normal na this is how we do our classes. The teacher is there, the student is there. So tingin ko kakayanin naman. In fact, yung ating crisis ngayon, halimbawa, yung digital divide na crisis na yan, ay nangyayari kasi hindi natin ginawa yung mga dapat na ginawa natin noon, no? Na dapat ay nag-upscale na yung ating mga university ng ICT nila even before. We're talking of a fourth revolution now, and yet, you look, we don't even have much connection all around the country. These are some of the situation how it is with our students. No? Patience is a virtue now for a teacher. You cannot just demand that you submit your assignment on time and etc. No? Because they don't have facilities. So we have to do adjustment. Halimbawa, my students, so there was an assignment, I said, you know, this is an exercise, I like you to write. But how to submit that one? You can submit it to our Moodle, but if you cannot do it, ay pwede din naman ninyo na isulat kamay, take a picture, and send it to me. Tingin ko yung mga estudyante na ganito, na nagsisikap, no? Na ito piso wifi lang ginagamit at naglalakad na malayong lugar para makakuha ho ng signal. Yung mga estudyante, marami ho yan sa buong Pilipinas, hindi lang sa amin sa Mindanao. Ay malaki yung aabutin, tingin ko, ng mga estudyante na yan. There are student of ours na kailangang umakyat ng bundok just to get a signal for messenger. For messenger. So how do you do your classes now? So that requires a lot of creativity. No, merong iba na alas 12 lang ng gabi ay pwedeng mag-upload or makagamit ng kanilang messenger dahil sa napakahirap na sitwasyon sa kanilang lugar. In fact, there were students of mine that said, "Sir, hirap talaga kami magklase. Bakit? Wala man kaming cellphone, sir." So sabi ko, paano kayo nakakapag-communicate sa ating messenger? Kasi yung cellphone na ginagamit ko, sir, sa nanay ko yan. So during the day, pag may trabaho yung nanay ko, wala akong cellphone ginagamit. So gabi lang ako nakaka-reply sa inyo. And up to today, we still have students who don't have cell phones. No? Like in our university, because we cater to the poorest of the poor. No? We cater to the indigenous communities. We cater to many Moro students. And life is already very difficult for many of them for the longest time. No? Kaya ito yung mga ilang konsiderasyon, no, na kailangang tingnan. So, we develop our platform, we force our creativity, then patience should always be important as we try to understand our students. No? And we use a multiple platforms. We go beyond classroom. No? It so happened na since December last year, I may radio program yung aming Department of Sociology, no, sa radio station owned by the Diocese of Marbel, yung Pananaw sa Kalinaw, Kalinaw sa Pananaw as our weekly program, ginagamit namin ngayon sa aming mga klase. No? It's a good thing because students can either follow us live by tuning in to the radio, or they can easily follow us also on Facebook because this is a live stream in Facebook. And advantage of it also ay nakakapag-invite kami ng mga speakers na gusto naming i-invite. No? So, we consolidate our different classes. Halimbawa, yung peace education classes namin, tapos naka-plug in sa lahat ng klase yung aming weekly edition na yan. No? Last week, in celebration of the International Day of Peace, halimbawa, all our peace education classes collaborated together with our partners like the EAI to put our conversation, peace conversation online. No? So this is a very rich material sa usapin ng kapayapaan, halimbawa, na nakapattern sa module namin na ginagamit ng aming mga estudyante. In the coming days, we are still arranging to go on TV. Kaya yung traditional teacher mo ngayon ay hindi na siya si ma'am na chalk and pen in the classroom. He becomes a broadcaster himself or herself. No? He becomes a leader conversationalist using different platforms in an effort na maabot yung mas maraming estudyante namin. Kasi yung problema talaga namin, how do you penetrate using different means? Madali ho magsabi ng modular, pero in our condition kasi ngayon, dahil marami kaming cases ng COVID, naka-lockdown yung mga borders namin. So, hindi nakaka-out yung mga materials na yan easily. Hindi kagaya sa elementary school na yung mga estudyante are just within the confine of the community. So it's a challenging time, but sabi nila, challenging times are always exciting times if we are dedicated to serve. Kaya sa amin ngayon, ilalagay namin ang frame na one, to be in touch with our students with whatever means available to us. Second, to ensure that we use multiple platforms and we use also creative means to survive with our class. And finally, in terms of assessment, we do assessment of our student to know exactly if they are learning. Hindi primacy ito kung ano yung grado na ibibigay sa bata. Kasi mahirap na sa teacher, mahirap pa sa estudyante yan, no? But the purpose of it, that they're able to go through the courses and they understood it, secondary na yung how do we give grades to students. What is more important, they're able to absorb given the limitations and the concerns that we have. Maraming challenges yan na kinakaharap natin. Our possible journal is not to admit the new normal. No? Ako yan talaga yung problema ko ng diskurso na new normal. We live in normal times in the past, which is full of inequality. Etong crisis natin ngayon ay nilabas lang ito. Lumabas ito because of the crisis. But it has been there. No? Na-escalate na yung social divide, yung digital divide. It was already there. That was the normal we had. Pero na-escalate lang, na-unravel ito when COVID came to the picture. Then, of course, there's a absence of peace in many of our communities and even in the lives of our individuals. Then the new normal that we have, that we are calling it, which I don't like to call it, I'd rather call it new, is a new abnormal, is full of uncertainty. And therefore, hindi natin siya dapat ina-accept. No? Dapat tinatanong siya, tama ba lahat ito? Dahil pag ina-accept natin is we miss the opportunity para itulak yung mga kailangang changes at pagbabago. I think we should always think, what is the desirable normal for all of us? And for me, is to build a just and a humane society. Is to build a society where students have all opportunity to learn. But the abnormal situation makes it more difficult for many of our students. So, yun yung maraming challenges. And I think kailangan yung cooperative work, no, in here. While we know the virus will not die out easily, I think the virus loves the Filipinos. At least it made us number one in Southeast Asia. Hindi na tayo nagna-number one sa region, pero ngayon, nag-number one tayo dyan. No? So, it means to say ay medyo matagal-tagal pa yan. But it doesn't mean na walang pwedeng gawin. No? And to do that is to start the question of what is this new normal. So in education, while we say no one is left behind, I think it's important also to discourse how to ensure that everybody will be on the same page. The biggest challenge we have under this abnormal circumstance is taking a toll on our psychological being. It creates a lot of anxiety, both for teachers, no, for educators, for administrators, for parents, and even for the student. Anong problema kasi pag humahaba at tumatagal yung panahon na yan, lahat yan ay nagkakaroon ng sense of normalcy at tingin ko ay dangerous siya. So, to end and cap and join you in our conversations later, I just like to say that at the end of the day, we have to think and go back to our communities because our community is our home. And we always think also, ano ba ang pwede nating gawin to create that kind of community today, given the limitations provided to us by COVID. We do not know, as educators, we do not know how we will end the semester, but we are happy we are now connected with our students. And I think with more dialogue and discussion with students, maigagapang namin to the advantage and benefit of everybody hanggang pag-end ng semester. I end on that note that I'll be glad to hear on questions and listen also to our next resource persons. Maraming salamat at magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat.
Ayan, thank you very much, Prof. Mayong, and thank you for sharing to us no, kung ano yung sociological perspective pa ng abnormal na panahon. So, of course, you've mentioned no, that challenging times are exciting times if you are willing to serve. And of course, when we talk about serving, we look up to our public servants. So, again, our second speaker, no, we cannot wait to listen to our City Councilor representing 2nd District of City of Malabon, who heads the Committee on Education, Cultural Affairs and Tourism, and the Committee on Cooperatives, Labor, Trade and Industry. As chairperson of these committees, he focuses on creating education to employment opportunities, especially to the students of City of Malabon University and the City of Malabon Polytechnic Institute. Through various partnerships with national and local government agencies, civil society organizations, and private entities. A graduate of Don Bosco College, he has been in public service since 2007. He started his career as Sangguniang Kabataan, chairperson of Barangay Maysilo, then was elected as SK Federation President. He also served as SK Federation NCR Secretary and a strong supporter of youth empowerment. He served as an advisor of the Youth of Malabon organization and a representative for the local council for the protection of children. A virtual warm round of applause to our second speaker, Councilor Enzo Oreta. Thank you po, Councilor, for joining us.
Yes po, magandang umaga po sa inyo po lahat. And good morning po, Ms. Jessa. At kanina po sa atin pong unang speaker, no, kay Sir Mario. At sa ating mga manonood, magandang araw po muli. So first of all, I'd like to thank Active Citizenship Foundation for inviting my office to be part of today's discussion. Mahalaga para sa amin na makasama sa mga spasyo tulad nito para mabahagi ang aming mga nagawa dito sa bayan ng Malabon. Congratulations to ACF for this initiative because this is your 10th episode already. And nakakabilib na nadadala natin ang mga diskusyon tungkol sa mga issue na kinakaharap natin ngayon despite we're on community quarantine. So para sa ating mga Malabonian audience na kasama natin ngayon, ang ACF po ay partner na ng aming opisina sa ilang initiatives. It started last October 28, 2019 when we held the forum about urban sustainability with participants from the civil society and key departments from the local government. And we're happy to be with them again today for another topic which is very close to my heart. Not only because I'm the chairperson of Malabon City Committee on Education, Cultural Affairs and Tourism, but also giving quality education to every Filipino child has been one of my advocacies ever since, as influenced by my mother, the late Senator Tessie Oreta. And may I add also my brother, nung siya po ay councilor, ito rin po ang hinawakan po niyang komite. Nung nagsimula ang pandemic, walang nag-expect siguro na tatagal tayo sa ganitong sitwasyon. So the local government of Malabon, sa pangunguna ni Mayor Enzo Oreta, we have been doing our best to respond to the needs of every Malabonian family. We reach out to the most marginalized sectors and coordinate with all stakeholders in order to respond to our constituents. We think the people's organization, community leaders, private groups from within and outside Malabon, who extend support to the local government, to the national government agencies, and the everyday one and one in keeping the spirit of Bayanihang Malabonian strong in this very difficult time. At syempre, di matutumbasan ang sakripisyo ng ating mga frontliners at healthcare workers who risk their lives in order to serve. Kasama na din dyan, of course, ang ating mga teachers, school administrators, and staff. Here in Malabon, we are lucky to have everyone in the education sector who work double time, minsan triple time pa, in coping up with this new normal. Ngayon, tayo may kinakaharap na pandemya dulot ng COVID-19. Tayo ay sinusubok ng panahon upang maging mas masigasig at mas creative pa sa pagbabigay ng serbisyo sa ating mga mag-aaral. Hindi magiging madali para sa mga guro, sa aming mga estudyante, sa mga magulang, pati na rin sa aming lokal na pamahalaan ang pag-adapt sa panibagong approach. At nais kong ibahagi ngayong umaga ang ginagawa ng Malabon to the efforts of our local government, DepEd Malabon Schools Division Office, and the City of Malabon University para sa mga kabataang Malabon. To give context, karamihan ng pamilya dito sa Malabon ay mayroon namang smartphone. Hindi naiiba sa profile ng mga pamilya sa buong Pilipinas. However, sa ating pakikipag-usap sa barangay, sa mga barangay po natin, pati na rin sa pag-aaral ng DepEd SDO, majority ng mga tao ay walang access sa stable internet connection. Ito yung naging basihan sa pagpili ng SDO Malabon sa paggamit ng home-based learning through modular distance education. May 3 modalities sa pag-aaral ngayon ng mga estudyante sa elementary hanggang senior high school. Una, ang home-based learning through modular online distance education. Pangalawa, ang blended learning. Ito ay kombinasyon ng face-to-face at home-based learning. Pangatlo, ay ang homeschooling. So dito po sa Malabon, gaya ng nabanggit ko po kanina, nag-i-implement ngayon ng home-based learning at nakafocus sa modular distance education. Ibig sabihin, hindi kinakailangan ng mga estudyante ng laptop o tablet or internet para sa kanila pong pag-aaral. Para sa akin at para sa maraming Malabonian, itong implementasyon na ito ay maganda dahil ito ay fit sa kung ano ang meron ang karamihan ng pamilyang Malabonian. Nagpapasalamat din tayo sa Schools Division Superintendent at sa grounded decision na ito na based sa realidad ng maraming pamilya dito sa lungsod. Dagdag sa modules na ipapamahagi sa mga estudyante, may iba ring learning resources na ating pinupush as support either online or offline. Ito ang mga sumusunod. Educational television and radio programs, DepEd Commons and Portal, assistance call and text messaging, Malabon e-learning management system which is funded by the LGU, Facebook Messenger Classroom, at instructional videos na pwedeng ma-access sa YouTube. Noong June, nakapag-enroll ng mga estudyante via remote and online enrollment. Kamakailan lang din, we launched a project RIDE. RIDE means Responsible in Delivery of Education. It is a project for distributing modules and answer sheets, yung ating mga learning packets sa mga estudyante. This is in partnership with Evotech Software Solutions, Inc. and Rotary Club of Malabon at Malabon Bayanihan Riders. Siyempre, katuwang ang lokal na government ng aming opisina. Share ko lang sa ating mga non-Malabonian audience, dito sa Malabon, merong isang grupo ng mga riders na umaagapay sa ating mga kababayan sa kanilang pamimili ng essential goods like food and medicine, and they do it for free. Tama, libre ang serbisyo na binibigay ng Malabon Bayanihan Riders. At sila ay katuwang ng SDO Malabon sa pagde-deliver ng mga learning packets sa mga barangay hall or teletindahan. So ano naman po ang teletindahan? Ito ay mga sari-sari store na partner natin sa pagbabahagi ng learning packets. Alam naman natin dito sa Pinas, bawat kanto merong tindahan. So ngayon, sila ay katuwang ng mga eskwelahan sa pagdi-distribute ng learning packets sa mga magulang. Hindi na kinakailangan na pumunta sa school at bumiyahe ng malayo ng mga magulang para kuhain ng modules at answer sheets ng mga anak nila dahil ito ay strategically distributed sa mga teletindahan at learning packets para sa kanila namang distribution. For more detailed explanation kung paano nag-work ang Project RIDE, meron pong video ang ating SDO Malabon. So please, let's watch this.
Pagbati mula sa sangay ng Malabon. Muling ihahatid sa inyo ang mga kaganapan at pangyayari sa bayan ng Malabon. Ito ang Balitaang Tambobong. Balitaan at impormasyon sa Malabon. Bagong programa sa pamamahagi ng modules at answer sheets. Ikinasa na. Project Ride. Aarangkada na sa buong Malabon. Tuloy-tuloy ang suporta na natatanggap ng mga paaralan Solutions Incorporated at ng Rotary Club of Malabon sa pangunguna ng Evotech CEO at Rotary Club Transforming President na si Mr. Gerard C. Frondozo at ng Malabon Bayanihan Riders sa pamumuno ng kanilang presidenteng si Mr. Joseph Legaspi. Isang memorandum of agreement ang namagitan upang maisakatuparan ang nasabing proyekto. Ang proyektong ito ay naglalayo na maging contactless ang mga transaksyon sa pagitan ng paaralan, teletindahan at magulang o guardian ng mag-aaral sa pamamagitan ng paggamit ng binuo nilang application, ang 7 Focus Platform. Gamit ang 7 Focus Platform application na naka-install sa mobile phone ng mga school personnel at teletindahan volunteer coordinators na magiging bahagi ng proyekto, magagawang maitala at masubaybayan ang mga naipamigay at naisoling modules at answer sheets. Sa pagkuha ng Malabon Bayanihan Riders ng mga BIN na naglalaman ng modules at answer sheets mula sa mga paaralan ay gagamitin ang nasabing application. Dito ay makikita ang code ng rider na kumuha ng learning materials, ang petsa kung kailan ito kinuha, kumpara ng quarter ang sakop ng modules, ang number at ang bilang o dami nito. Kapag ito ay nakuha na ng rider, ay pipindutin ng essential school personnel ang releasing ng ibig sabihin ay naibigay na ang BIN sa rider at ihahatid na ito sa designated teletindahan o barangay hall. Sa pagtanggap ng mga nakatalagang volunteer coordinator sa teletindahan o barangay hall mula sa mga naghatid na rider ay muling gagamitin ang nasabing application. Kanilang re-record ang mga detalye at pipindutin ang receiving na nangangahulugan na nasa kanila na ang BIN at ito ay nadala na ng rider. Samantala, sa pagkuha ng magulang o guardian sa modules at answer sheets sa mga pick-up at drop-off areas, ay hindi na nila kailangan pang pumirma o magsulat. Kailangan lang nilang ibigay ang nai-assign na code ng paaralan sa estudyante at hindi ang pangalan nito bilang pagsunod sa Data Privacy Act. Gamit ang application ay mai-record kung ang mga ito ay natanggap na ng taong kumuha. Pipindutin lamang ng volunteer coordinator ang receiving at ito ay otomatikong magpapadala ng mensahe sa teacher advisor na nagsasaad na nakuha na ang naturang learning materials. Maliban dito ay kukunan din ang taong kumuha ng litrato o snapshot bilang katibayan na siya ang nakatanggap nito. Sa pagsasauli naman ng mga accomplished o nasagutan ng worksheets, base sa kanilang assigned schedule, ay maitatala din ang mga detalye nito. Kung kailan at anong module at worksheets ang naibalik na. Sa pamamagitan ng 7 Focus Platform ay malalaman ng teacher advisor kung sino-sino na ang nakakuha at nakapagbalik ng modules at answer sheets at mabigyang paalala naman ang mga hindi pa nakatatanggap at nakapagsasauli nito. Gamit lamang ang kanilang mobile phone ay makapag-iimbentaryo na sila at mabibigyan impormasyon ukol dito na hindi na kinakailangan pang lumabas at magtungo sa paaralan. Sa pagsasagawa ng lahat ng ito ay mahigpit pa rin ipinatutupad ang minimum health standard tulad ng pagkuha ng body temperature, paggamit ng alcohol, physical distancing, pagsusuot ng face mask at face shield. Iba yung paalala pa din ang sinasagawa sa bawat taong bahagi ng proyekto upang masiguro ang kaligtasan ng lahat. At yan ang mga kasalukuyang balita at impormasyon sa bayan ng Malabon. Ito ang Balitang Tambobong. balitaan at impormasyon sa Malabon. Lagi magbabantay at susubaybay sa mga kaganapan na inyong kakaabangan. Dito sa Malabon, ang bayanihan ay buhay na buhay na magsisilbing tulay sa pagbibigay kalinga at gabay.
So, yan po ang sa part ng elementary hanggang senior high. So para naman sa college, we have opted for a different approach. Sa City of Malabon University or CMU, we used a blended flexible learning approach. So blended flexible learning approach is the design and delivery of programs, courses, and learning interventions that addresses learners' unique needs in terms of place, process, and products of learning. Siyempre, we have to utilize a learning management system para maging effective ang pagturo ng mga professors at pag-aaral ng mga estudyante. Using a web-based hosted solution platform that will address the learning process and tracks the process, pools, educational resources, and evaluates the performance of the learning institution. So para sa CMU, meron tayong tinatawag na CODES. It stands for Creating Opportunities Using Diverse Educational System. So pinundahan ng lokal na pamahalaan ang pagkakaroon ng learning management system, ang CMU at magkaroon ng account ng bawat mag-aaral ng universidad. Ang classes ng mga college students ay online. Makikita nila ang kanilang mga reading material sa platform, pati rin ang pagtuturo at pakipag-ugnayan nila sa mga guro ay via the platform. This is implemented to keep up with the other universities for the sake, of course, of our students, lalo na para sa ating mga junior and senior students. So far, yun po ang mga updates para sa ating mga ginagawa sa pag-adapt ng Malabon sa new normal in the context of the education sector. Of course, sinisigurado natin ang mga plano ng lahat ng mga institusyon involved, especially ng lokal na pamahalaan, ng SDO at ng CMU, ay based sa needs at capability assessment. Siyempre, based din ito sa kung ano ba ang sinasabi ng mga ating mga mag-aaral for things to work. Dapat talaga na student-based ang ating response. Kaya naman, we keep on consulting with them and we learn from their inputs and suggestions. Alam ko marami pang mangyayari at marami pa tayong pinaplano para sa mga estudyante. At sa ngayon, ang aming opisina ay nakikipag-coordinate sa iba't ibang grupo para ma-augment ang mga initiatives na ito. For instance, Educasenso Initiative, nakikipag-usap tayo sa isang telco company para sa pamahagi ng mga SIM cards para sa mga magulang at mga estudyante. Ito ay para sa coordination assistance ng mga guro sa magulang or via call or text. Aside from this goal, ang added value nito ay para sa mga guro ay mas mabilis silang magkaroon ng database ng mga contact details ng mga magulang ng kanilang estudyante. Nagko-conduct din tayo ng online discussions tulad nitong webinar series. Yung unang episode namin, couple of months ago, we featured si Dr. Mauro Digulan, ang ating Malabon Schools Division Superintendent, para makapagbigay linaw sa mga katanungan ng mga magulang at estudyante tungkol sa darating na pasukan. And we also featured si Ms. Ailina Sembrado, ang ating Early Childhood Care and Development Coordinator, to clarify paano naman yung mga chikiting na papasok sa daycare. Nakipag-partner din tayo sa Philippine Toy Library at namahagi din tayo ng mga libro at sa mga piling honor student na gumraduate nung nakaraan school year. So binisita natin sila at kinamusta. Nakakatuwang dahil parang naging mini graduation na nila ang ating pagbisita sa abot ng simpleng token. No? Sa pag-abot ng simpleng token. In the end, mahalaga ang pagtutulungan. Sabay-sabay tayong nangangapa sa new normal. At dapat sama-sama tayong nagtutulungan para mapanatili ang safety at health at well-being ng bawat isa. Siyempre, lalo na sa ating mga kabataan. Kami dito sa Malabon, ginagawa ang lahat mabigay sa kabataan natin ang kalidad na edukasyon at pundasyon ng matiwasay at maasensong buhay. Sa ngayon, iyon ang aking mababahagi. So maraming salamat at magandang umaga po sa inyo.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councilor Enzo Oreta. And we are, from the student perspective po, we are very happy that you have these kinds of initiatives for the students of Malabon. And now we go to our question and answer portion. So we reached actually 80 participants in our Facebook Lives. In our Zoom, we have 32 participants. So Professor Mayong, we have a question for you. The question is, how would you define education under the new normal, or in your own words, abnormal? No? So what elements should be present to make it as effective, if not more effective, than how education was prior to the pandemic? So maybe this is a question of parang magkaiba ba yung quality ng education before the pandemic and after the pandemic?
Napaganda nung tanong, Jessa. Hindi lang kasi sa akin bilang naiibang klase ng educator, hindi lang to usapin kung nagiging effective tayo. Kasi yung effectiveness kasi na concept, para bang paano mo nasabi naging effective yung pagtuturo sa mga bata, kaya mataas yung kanilang grado. I think we should go more on the issue whether education becomes meaningful to students. Ano ba ang, kahit anong subject kasi pwedeng i-konteksto sa kasalukuyang dinaraanan natin. Paano nabibigyan ng meaning at paano ang nagagamit yung mga meaning ng kasalukuyang pinagdaraanan natin para i-improve yung chances of survival and chances of success ng ating mga estudyante. Kaya kailangang i-rethink, kailangan ko ba talaga na lahat ng lessons na ito ay ibigay sa mga bata? Then ultimately, nakita ko, itong mga lessons na to pwede namang wala na-integrate na doon sa iba kasi dahil nga sa kahirapan na makontak yung mga bata. And remember na both teachers and students ay may dinadaan ng kanya-kanyang anxiety. No? So how do you build that meaningful relationship? Tingin ko, ito dapat yung essence ng bagong edukasyon. Well, hindi siya bago. Ito yun dapat sa desirable. But under the abnormal condition, let us take the opportunity. I think kailangan nating tingnan po, nagiging meaningful ba ang pagtuturo natin sa buhay-buhay ng ating mga estudyante? Paano nagiging meaningful ang mga estudyante sa buhay-buhay ng mga teachers, ng mga administrators, at syempre, mga kagaya nila Kagawad Enzo. So yun yung dapat na nagli-link sa atin to find our meaning under this particular condition.
Thank you very much, Prof. Mayong. To our second speaker, Councilor Enzo, we have here a question for you. May special programs po ba ang university or LGU para sa students with special needs and PWDs? What was done to address the issue of slow connectivity?
Thank you, Ma'am Jessa, and to the one who asked the question. Yes, meron po tayong ginawa. Like I said po kanina, with the help of Bayanihan, Malabon Bayanihan Riders and yung project ride po natin, hinahatid po natin sa kanila yung kanila pong modules, no? So hindi na po nila kailangan lumabas or hindi na po nila kailangan mahirapan sa pagdating po sa kanila ng mga modules na ito. So yun po. Maraming salamat po.
Ayan, thank you very much, Councilor. And I think this is also connected to that. How did LGU address the influx of new students into the public schools? May support program po ba para sa private schools na naapektuhan ng student migration? If I may share as well, meron po tayong tinatawag, yung DepEd na tinatawag na private exodus. So yung madami po sa mga enrollees natin from the private school ay nagmamigrate na sa public school dahil siguro hindi na nila kayang mag-tuition sa upcoming academic year. So meron po bang mga programa ang Malabon local government unit?
Makipag-coordinate tayo din sa mga private schools natin. And yes, talagang nahihirapan sila and we are lenient sa tax, no? And tinutulungan natin ang mga students. So well-equipped naman ang Malabon SDO para sa pagdami ng students po. They have already foreseen kung ano po yung mangyayari. And sa pag-uusap po natin sa kanila, well-equipped naman po at handa naman po tayo sa sitwasyon na gano'n.
Ayan. So that's happy. That's good to know, Councilor, no? Kasi madami din po tayong mga private institutions na madami daw ay nagsasarado na. So magandang marinig, no, from our public servant na meron tayong nakahanda na tulong para sa kanila. So again, a question for Professor Mayong. For the university, what measures will be taken to ensure the integrity of the e-learning processes? Paano mag-adapt ang grading systems? Hindi kaya magkakadayaan sa exams kapag online ang method. Ayan, so malaking issue ito, Professor Mayong.
Yung problema kasi ng dating normal na pananaw ay gumagawa tayo ng exam para i-test kung naintindihan yung itinuro natin. Rather than, so kung nagturo ka ng 1 + 1 = 2, dapat ay na-memorize ng bata na dapat 2. Pero ngayon, tingin ko, hindi dapat gano'n ang esensya ng ating edukasyon. I'll go back again dun sa issue ng meaning. 1 + 1 = 2, ano ba ang meaning niyan para doon sa bata? So yun yung kailangan magiging focus, no? Kaya babaguhin natin, kagaya ng nasabi ko kanina, nagbabago pati yung assessment namin. It's a challenge for us as a teacher. Kasi dati, ang assessment, di ba? Sa akin dati, no less than 5 pages, no? 3 oras na examine sa bata. But at the end of the day, given this situation, pwede pa rin naman siyang gawin. Ibibigay mo lang, hindi mo lang itatanong kung ano yung tinuro mo, kundi itatanong mo ano ang meaning ng itinuro mo doon sa bata. And I think that will make our learning environment more responsive sa pangangailangan ng mga bata. But of course, kailangan ng support din ng mga teachers ito, no, in terms of doing the creativity. Kaya ito rin yung nagdadala pa rin ng anxiety. No? Kasi nakatali pa rin, you like it or not, maraming guro natin, nakatali pa rin doon sa dating framework, no, na pinakamahalaga at the end of the day ay may grado yung bata. Ako, from the start ng teaching ko, Jessa, I always in the framework kasi na una, ang grado ng bata ay hindi magdidetermine ang kanyang future. Pangalawa, ay dapat yung bata ay pumapasok sa klase hindi dahil takot siya na baka mabagsak siya. Dapat pumapasok yung bata sa klase dahil nag-i-enjoy siya sa klase. And we have to change that frame sa maraming teacher natin. Kaya yung mga pinakita ko kanina, yung peace education halimbawa namin, interactive work ito, no? You draw it, you write it, no? You challenge yung creativity na actually naging bahagi yung mga paaralan natin na para patayin, no? Kasi kinompartmentalize natin 'di ba? Yung art is for the art subject. Yung English ay dapat ganito, yung Filipino ay dapat ganito. Where in fact, dapat na i-integrate siya lahat. Then mas nagde-develop ng confidence yung mga bata. So kung may way lang ako na to give grades to my students, I will love to do it. No? Pero dahil constrained kami, then I would be more practical in giving grades to my students. Kasi at the end of the day, their grades don't determine their future. Their future is always determined paano natin binibuild yung confidence ng bata na yan, ng estudyante na yan, para makisalamuha sa ating lipunan. So yun yung challenge doon.
Ayan. Thank you very much, Prof. Mayong. And another question for Councilor Enzo. How will Malabon sustain the e-learning program budget-wise in the next years? Say for example, mag-extend pa po yung pandemic if hindi pa po natin siya ma-address before matapos yung 2020. May new budget allocated po ba for load, equipment, gadget, and maybe internet connectivity for schools or for barangay communities?
Ayan, thank you again for the question, Ma'am Jessa.
Mahihirap yung mga
Of course, kailangan ng pag-adjust ng budget and ating mga plano. Lalo na ngayon ay budget season, pinag-aaralan ito ng executive. Actually ngayon po, pinagpaplanuhan po namin to and we have already come up with the adjustment. And ipapatupad na lang po yung aming budget plan ngayon po sa City Council, which is sponsored by our appropriation committee, no? And isa po akong member doon. So yes po, pinag-aralan namin po ito at we have already adjusted our budget for the next how many years pa to come. Kasi ang iniisip po namin, hindi lang to isang taon but maybe would last for maybe 3 years. So ganun po kami kalayo naghanda para po dito.
Siguro a follow-up question for that, Councilor. Sabi po kasi dito ng isang participant natin, sana all LGUs can be as responsive as Malabon. So do you support less resource-rich sister cities in their e-learning initiatives also? So may rescue.
Yes po. So pwede naman po kami mag-info sharing, no, sa mga sessions with other cities. We're happy to share. We're happy to share, and I think ngayon po sa mga ibang councilors naman po nag-share naman kami ng ideas, lalo na po yung aming pong Vice Mayor, si Vice Mayor Nino. Yun nga po yung tungkol po sa pagbibilis ng aming mga pagpapasa ng ating mga ordinansa at mga resolusyon na kailangan. So ano naman, we share kung ano po yung meron kami in case yung mga ibang sister cities natin na wala pa or hindi pa nila naiisip. Pero marami din naman po kaming natutunan at mas nagpapasalamat din kami sa mga ibang sister cities namin na kami din nakakuha din kami ng mga magagandang information mula sa kanila po. So ano lang, open communication lang po. Basta po may naisip kami maganda, share po namin kaagad just in case na hindi po nila o kaya makatulong po sa kanila. So thank you po, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you po, Councilor. Siguro a practical question for Professor Mayong, since meron po tayong, na-mention nyo kanina, no, meron tayong mga teachers na not so young and not so familiar with the technology. So in Mindanao po, paano po ninyo tinutulungan yung mga ganong klaseng issues, no, or yung mga concerns ng ating mga teachers?
Well, kailangan tayong develop yung partnership between the young and old, no, this time. So maraming mga teacher mo dyan, parang teacher din yung anak nila, no? Yun yung nagsi-set up, nag-aayos ng Moodle. Tulungan talaga ito, no? Because there's no other way. The management can only do as much also. I think yung effort naman ay nandyan. But at the end of the day, halimbawa kami, we develop also a system of coaching doon sa mga kasama namin. Ay ma'am, ganito dapat gawin yan. Ganito dapat yan. No? Hindi pwedeng pabayaan na kanya-kanya lang. And I think, given also the example na sinabi nga ni Councilor Enzo kanina, ay we come to a full realization that education is a social responsibility. It takes an entire community to raise a child. This is the time. This is the time because the child that is learning, the student that is learning is not in the school. Nasa komunidad siya. So paano siya natutulungan ng ating local government units? Siguro kung may Wi-Fi connection yung barangay, mas mabuti. Paano siya natutulungan ng kanyang kapitbahay? No? Baka mapatahimik yung aso, lahat ng sounds na disturb sa bata, and for entire community to support na despite the difficulty ay nagsisikap yung bata. Kasi this is also the first time, lalo na sa tertiary, no? Yung mga tertiary students kasi, yung mga college, pag nag-college na kagaya sa amin, dahil residential campus kami, talagang yung mga estudyante, hindi yan nagbebiyahe everyday, no? Yung iba dyan, once every semester na lang nakakauwi. So wala sila sa kanilang community, no? Pero ngayon, nandyan sila sa kanilang community, then it gives meaning paano tumulong yung buong community. And I think yung kanila Councilor Enzo was just telling us, you know, it's mobilizing the entire community to raise a child. That was the very essence of what is education all about. Pero nawala kasi siya Prenagment natin at certain point, no, na yung edukasyon problema lang ng paaralan yan. Tayo pa sandali. Di ba? Bakit kami lang? Nasaan yung community? Nasaan yung local government? So ito, mahalagang lesson na dapat i-call out natin. At sabi ko nga kay Councilor, sana magtuloy-tuloy itong tulungan na ito, may COVID o wala. Di ba? Mas masaya yung ating mga teacher, mas masaya yung ating mga learners. Ako, naiinggit ako kanila Councilor Enzo, no? Marami sa Mindanao, ang ginagawa halimbawa ng mga elementary school teachers, sila yung nagpre-print ng material sa modular. Walang libro yung mga bata, no? So they print it that we even reach to a point na may krisis ng papel. Kasi wala kang mapabiling papel. Tapos si ma'am, sabi ko nga, parang kaming nagbuo ng isang pinakamalaking printing house sa buong Pilipinas. Kasi kada school na puntahan mo, lahat ng teacher ang ginagawa, nag-pre-print. And they will be printing on a weekly basis. So that's real challenge. Yung delivery pa, paano may deliver, no? Kanila kagawad, okay lang dahil may ICT sila. Dito sa amin, maraming lugar walang signal. Di ba? Paano magagawin? Pero hindi pwedeng sabihin, hindi pwedeng gawin. Kailangan lang na i-strengthen natin yung cooperation ng different segments of our community to really ensure that our student get educated and became an active citizen in the future in our communities. Yun yung challenge.
Thank you very much, Professor. And siguro ito naman, no, punta naman tayo dun sa national scale. So may question tayo dito. To both speakers, what national legislation would you recommend to address the problems you see in the e-learning/blended education? We got the hardest questions today.
Yeah,
Sige, anyone?
Ako tingin ko ng in terms of legislation, kailangan talaga nating i-prioritize yung education. I don't think it's number one still in our budget. Pero pag tinanong mo yung mga kaguruan natin, ang mga schools natin, sasabihin nilang kapos yung budget. Pangalawa ay kailangan nating i-develop yung ICT infrastructure natin. No? I think in-unravel ito ng crisis. Kailangan siyang i-develop. Hindi dahil nag-online learning na lang tayo all the time. But there are many things that the teacher and students can learn when we have all these infrastructures. Nung ako ay Vice Chair ng House of Higher Education, is actually na dinidevelop namin that time was to develop a national policy on distant education. Kasi parang ngayon, para mag-aral ka, kailangan mo na sa school. Pero sa maraming community, malaking kawalan yan. No? Halimbawa, in our IP communities, kada estudyante na pumunta sa school ay problema ng pamilya. Bakit? Una ay meron kang isang bata na papakainin mo na hindi kasama sa pakain araw-araw sa bahay. It means extra cost. But above all, may isa kang bata na nawala sa farm, nawala katulong doon sa community kasi nasa school siya. Why do we insist na dapat ang pag-aaral ay all the time nasa loob ng paaralan? Na pwede naman na pwede siyang naka-online at certain point, pwede siyang other point na doon lang siya sa community, and there are times that they go to school. Halimbawa sa Thailand, napakalakas ng kanilang distance learning education. No? Halimbawa, yung isang nabisita ko kasi that time na I'm really impressed up to today, the Sukhothai University. Isa siyang malaking campus, may estudyante siya araw-araw, pero distant learning sila. Sabi ko, bakit may estudyante kayo? Ay, yung mga estudyante, sir, may schedule sila ng visit sa school for technical skills na training. No? Kasi the machine and everything ay nandoon sa school. So, yun lang yung time, nakaschedule sila. Halimbawa, 10 days, they go to school. But the rest of it, they go on different forms. Kailangan natin ng legislation na tingnan yung ating edukasyon uli. No? Kasi nangyayari, tinatali natin na ngayon yung mga estudyante sa paaralan. Na tapos, saka natin silang ibabalik uli sa community pag graduate, where in fact, dapat continuous yung learning process ng bata. No? From the school and bringing it to the community, and from the community, dadalhin niya uli sa paaralan, then it's only there and then that we develop active citizen. Kasi pag hindi, na-detach yung bata, no? Na-detach siya, tapos ang nangyari pag graduate, karierista na. No? Manap ng career rather than mag-isip, paano ba ako pwedeng tumulong sa aking community? So I think that should be the first legislation that we have to look in terms of investment. Hindi mura at dapat wag baratin ang edukasyon. Pangalawa ay mag-develop ng modality ng education na may option yung mga bata. Hindi siya nakakulong sa paaralan all the time. No? Kundi may time lang na nasa paaralan siya. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor. Councilor?
Ma'am Jessa. Being in the legislative sector myself, no, so naisip ko, pwede nating lakihan ang budget, no, para sa ating pag-aaral, sa pag-aaral natin mga estudyante, equip the teachers with ICT trainings, tapos mas maraming materials for the parents also. Pero what I think, no, sige, pwede nating gawin yun, but we have to involve the parents talaga. Sila talaga yung dapat mag-step up dito, no. Lakihan natin yung budget, let's equip them with the right, let's say, connectivity, internet connectivity, yung ating mga modules, yung ating SIM cards, gadget, sige, gawin natin yun. Like what Professor Mario said, no, na hindi lang problema ito ng ng education sector, eh. Problema to ng lahat. And especially dapat maging on board dito is yung family, the parents talaga. They have to make time, they have to be the one na i-equip natin and ituturuan din natin para maging mas makabuluhan at mas maging maganda ang pag-aaral ng kanilang mga anak during these times. So yun po, I see yun yung magandang gagawin na legislation nationally.
Jessa, may I just add, no, related din doon kay Councilor Enzo. Ngayon ay gusto nating tumulong yung mga magulang na turuan yung kanilang estudyante. Pero iba na yung sistema ng edukasyon ngayon eh. Iba na yung mga subjects ngayon na hindi nakuha ng mga magulang. No? And I think we have to introduce in our educational system is basically the system of lifelong education. Parents like to go to school, then they can go to school for free. Ito yung kailangan kasi ngayon parang sinasabi, if you are in an IP community, yung anak nga nila, yun lang yung first time na nakatapos ng grade 6. So paano tuturuan ng magulang yung mga anak, di ba? Na nasa bahay lang sila. So if we develop a lifelong system of education, this is not only for the future generation, but this is for the past generation to enjoy how it is to be in the school and in the university. Then let us make it free to them. Dapat yung mga paaralan natin ay mag-offer ng ganun, no? Na para sa mga magulang din natin.
Just to add po, Ma'am Jessa, sa sinabi po ni Professor. Professor, napakaganda po nung sinabi po ninyo, no? That lifelong learning. And it's something we will look into ngayon po dito po sa Malabon. Thank you po.
Ayan, thank you very much. And last question, do you see everything reverting one day to the way they were before the pandemic? Is face-to-face engagement the only way to go? So maybe a short but sweet answer na lang po sa ating last question. Professor.
Ako, kagaya ng nasabi ko kanina, there should be a desirable normal or situation we like to go. I think pagkatapos ni COVID, dapat ay matransform na yung educational system natin, that there will be a combination of a face-to-face, mahalaga ang face-to-face, but also using the online platforms and other platforms available. Put it together, then that will become more meaningful for our students.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor.
So, ma'am, yes, I think babalik naman talaga sa normal lahat yun sa dati before this pandemic. And so this time, I think this is an opportunity talaga that we should explore more on what we can do for our learners, for our teachers, for everyone. And it was also an opportunity to cope up with the other countries that already have this kind of things, these systems, way before pre-pandemic. Yun nga, pagkatapos ng COVID, tama nga po yung sinabi ni Professor na dapat itong mga experience natin ngayon, magamit na natin siya. Hindi tayo dapat bumalik lang sa dating normal. Nag-advance tayo eh. So everything we learn and today in this pandemic, we apply also to make the education system.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councilor Enzo Oreta and Professor Mario Aguja. So sa ating mga manonood, we've got 1.5 discussion with our 2 esteemed guest speakers, and we got to learn about the sociological perspective of the pandemic, saying that this trying time should not be labeled as normal but as abnormal. And our professor here shared kung ano po yung mga ginawa nila sa Mindanao State University when the pandemic hits the Philippines. They have prepared their guidelines, they have trained their faculty, they have made use of hardware and softwares, and they also make sure that the scientific investigation was also there. So they asked their students what are the top 3 worries that they have, and it shows that they have technical, learning environment, and psychosocial worries. So ito yung mga issues ng signal, ng gadgets, ng internet connection, ng ingay sa bahay, at of course yung worry about the current situation of our country. And we also learn that this teachers and educators in Mindanao also go beyond classrooms. They also go to the multiple platforms such as televisions and radio platforms, and they say that these are challenging times but also an exciting times, especially for those who are serving. So we also was given a glimpse of what the local government unit of Malabon was doing right now in the pandemic to deliver the education to our students in Malabon. So they have told us that they are currently having TV and radio programs. They also have exhausted their social media platforms to deliver the learning modules. And they also have the assistance of call and text message, and the very, I think, unique part is the project ride, response and delivery of education, where the students and teachers can get their modules for free. And they also have Malabon Bayanihan Riders, where teachers and parents can get their modules as well to different places in Malabon. And we've also raised a good discussion in the question and answer portion that we also need to provide a free education for our parents so that they can have a lifelong learning. Since we have a very different terrain of education right now in the pandemic, we hope that we can see this kind of project in different parts of the country, and of course the different school system in the Philippines. So again, thank you to our speakers, Professor Mario Aguja and Councilor Enzo Oreta, for sharing your expertise and your plans to address the digital divide, at least for the education system. So for those who tuned in from our first session up until now, thank you very much. And we hope that through this webinar series, we were able to share a glimpse of the experiences and recommendations on how to create a just and better normal for everyone. We hope to see you all after the pandemic as we face the new normal. So again, good morning, everyone. I am Jessa Rodriguez from the Student Council Alliance of the Philippines, and mag-iingat tayong lahat. Thank you very much. Yan. Maraming salamat po sa mga taga Malabon na nakinig at sa ating mga students and mga teachers sa sa Mindanao State University. So Professor, baka may gusto po kayong sabihin sa kanila? Sa mga
maraming salamat, at sana tayo ay bumuo ng isang pamantasan, sabi ng aking kaibigang si Gary Granada, pamantasan ng puso. Assalamualaikum.
Councilor?
Kaya sa muli po, sa lahat na nakikinig, maraming salamat po for listening. Ma'am Jessa, thank you for the opportunity. Professor Mario, maraming salamat. Marami po ako natutunan sa inyo today. No? And for everyone, stay safe po and let's not wait for the vaccine. The best vaccine is available. It's called discipline po. So mag-ingat lang po tayong lahat. Stay safe and we hope to see everyone alive after this pandemic po. So thank you po.
Thank you very much. So sa ating mga viewers, please like the Active Citizenship Foundation for more updates of their upcoming webinars. Thank you very much.
Hey baby, how's it going? Sun shines, is he going through some hesitation? But I'm on my way, here to prove I don't need any medication, 'cause I'll be